In this video I have collected rare historical photos and facts that will show you another side of the past. I will tell you the story behind each of these photos. My name is Parker and I'm happy to welcome you to my channel. If you love history, be sure to subscribe. Ariana Afghan Airlines, 1970s. A plane from Ariana Afghan Airlines, the national carrier of Afghanistan, during the 1970s. Founded in 1955, the airline flew a fleet of Western planes like the Boeing 727 with international flights to Europe, India and the USSR. At that time, the airline was a symbol of Afghanistan's modernization and global connections. While it continued after the 1978 revolution, its work was severely limited in later decades due to political instability and war. A coal miner having his evening meal in 1937. This photo captures a worker during a short rest break deep underground. In the 1930s, coal mining was a key industry for countries like the USSR, the United States and Great Britain. A miner's workday could last 10 to 12 hours, and meal breaks often happened right at the coal face. Light was provided by individual lamps attached to helmets or placed nearby, as seen in this shot. A Bedouin woman with a child in Saudi Arabia, 1948. In 1948, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia was on the verge of massive change due to the start of large-scale oil production. However, in the desert regions, the traditional nomadic way of life of the Bedouin people still remained exactly as it had been for centuries. The invention of potato chips, 1853. A cooking experiment at Moon's Lake House in Saratoga Springs, New York, in 1153. A legend has it that George Crumb, the restaurant's chief, prepared very thin slices of fried potatoes after a customer complained that his French fries were too thick. In response, Crumb sliced the potatoes as thin as possible, fried them until they were crispy, and added a lot of salt. The dish, originally called Saratoga chips, quickly became a favorite. Over the next decades, thin fried potato slices began to be made in factories, leading to the global snack we know today. Manhattan Bridge construction, 1909. The construction of the Manhattan Bridge in March 1909. This is a view from the Brooklyn side, looking at the unfinished steel towers and spans rising over the East River. The bridge opened in 1909 for trams, pedestrians and horse carriages. It was designed by Leon Museum and was the first major suspension bridge to use flexible stiffening beams, allowing it to handle the weight of heavy trains. Churchill the painter, 1946. Winston Churchill, the famous British politician, was also a painter who created over 500 works during his life. This photo taken in Miami Beach in 1946 shows him during a private visit to the United States after his defeat in the 1945 British elections. Churchill began painting in 1915 while he was out of office. He preferred oil paints, mostly landscapes, and even exhibited at the Royal Academy of Arts under a fake name. His love for art was well known and often mentioned in the news. Ontario Floods, 1974. A police officer guards the entrance to a pharmacy during a flood in Ontario, 1974. Taken in Thunder Bay, this photo shows the scale of the flooding caused by heavy rains in October 1974. The disaster caused rivers to overflow and forced many people to leave their homes. During the emergency, protecting essential places like pharmacies was a key task for the police to prevent looting and keep order. This shot is a document of law enforcement at work during a national disaster. Hockey in Korea, 1952. Canadian soldiers serving in Korea set up an improvised hockey rink in 1952. Canadian units were part of the United Nations forces during the Korean War. During quiet times between battles, soldiers organized activities to keep up their spirits. This improvised rink was built by the soldiers themselves using whatever materials they could find. It was a piece of home brought to the front lines. Flight from United Kingdom to Australia, 1935. Passengers on an Eastern Airlines flight from the United Kingdom to Australia in 1935. This was one of the first commercial transcontinental flights. It took 11 days and included many stops. Planes back then couldn't fly long distance without refueling, so the route went through Europe, the Middle East, India and Southeast Asia. Passengers stayed in hotels during the overnight stops. Traveling this way was for very few people. It was an expensive and risky venture, more like an expedition than a modern flight. There was a true spirit of pioneers on board, and every successful stage of the journey felt like a victory over distance. Mount St. Helens, June 1980. This shot was taken a month after the catastrophic eruption on May 18th, which completely changed the landscape. A cloud of ash and steam still rises from the crater, and the slopes are covered in a thick grey layer of volcanic material. The eruption was one of the most significant in the United States history. It reduced the mountain's height by almost 400 meters and destroyed hundreds of square kilometers of forest. The Vorgon chair, early 20th century. The detention of a homeless man during an anti-emergency campaign in the United States in the first half of the 20th century. The man is secured in a special chair and left on the street for a long time. Such methods of public humiliation were used by city authorities to force homeless people to leave town. At that time, emergency was a crime in many states. Local laws allowed police to arrest people without a home or a job. Placing them in a wagon chair or a public cage was a common punishment meant to scare people away from staying in the city. Temporary monument, 1944. French residents set up a temporary monument for an American soldier killed during the Normandy landings. Charenton, France, June 17, 1944. Charenton was a key location where firefighting took place after D-Day. The city was liberated by American paratroopers from the 101st Airborne Division on June 20th. These improvised monuments were a sign of deep gratitude and respect from the local people toward their liberators. Victory Day in New York, 1945. People sit on the curb among confetti and paper after celebrating the end of the World War II in New York on August 14, 1945. This day, known as Victory Day, was announced after the surrender of Japan, finally ending the war. Massive celebrations filled Times Square and other parts of the city. The confetti and paper on the streets were left over from parades and cheering crowds. Similar scenes took place in allied cities all over the world to celebrate the end of the 6-year global conflict. Early Apple Macintosh, 1984. The assembly of Apple Macintosh computers and the company's factory in Cupertino, California on January 25, 1984. This shows one of the final production stages just before sales began. The Macintosh 128K was the first mass-market personal computer to feature a graphical interface and a mouse. The production process in Cupertino used both automated machines and hand assembly for parts like the plastic case and the 9-inch monitor. A French soldier with a prototype mask in 1918. This photo shows a soldier who received facial wounds during World War I. At Anna Coleman-Led's studio in Paris, he is being fitted for a custom mask made of thin copper and hand-painted with enamel to match his skin tone. Led's studio made hundreds of these masks for soldiers with disfiguring injuries. These masks allowed veterans to return to public life with more confidence, even though they couldn't restore physical function. A permanent hair wave using an electric machine in 1938. This procedure in a hair salon cost about $1 per session. They allowed women to have long-lasting curls without needing daily styling. This made fashion much more accessible and popular for everyone. Liberating Stelic, 1945. An American M4 Sherman tank smashed through the gates of the Stelic, prisoners of war camp, during a liberation mission. This camp, also known as Stelic, was located near Hammelburg, Germany. It held prisoners of many nationalities. This camp was liberated by the United States 14th Armored Division on April 6, 1945, during the final Allied push into Germany. Young Pows, 1945. Two soldiers from the United States 4th Infantry Division guard a group of teenage German prisoners of war near Dusfeld, Germany in 1945. This was taken during the final stage of the war in Europe, shortly after the intense battles in the Hürtgen forest. By the end of the war, the German military was more and more reluctant of young boys from the Volksraum and Hitler Youth. The American soldiers are armed with M1 carbines, the standard weapon for infantry at that time. Westminster Bridge in London, around 1940. This photo shows one of the oldest bridges over the Thames, connecting Westminster and Lambeth. During this time, the city was under heavy bombing, which left a mark on daily life. The stone bridge we see here opened in 1162, replacing an earlier 18th century structure designed by engineer Thomas Page. It features Gothic details that match the neighbor palace of Westminster. The construction of the Empire State Building in New York in the 1930s. Steel workers are seen high above the ground without any safety harnesses or helmets. The building is 443 meters tall and was built in a record time, just 410 days. It was built during the Great Depression, providing work for thousands. Safety standards back then were worlds apart from what we see today. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe if you enjoyed it. I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.